When Katniss destroys the games, she goes to District 13 and meets President Coin, who convinces her to become the symbol of the rebellion, while trying to save Peeta from the Capitol. This is my review of The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. Yeah, so here I am with my review of my most anticipated movie of the year, a month and a half after it was released in theaters. Yeah, so here I am with my review, guys, of Mockingjay Part 1. It's been a long time coming. As I said just a second ago, this movie was my most anticipated movie of the year just because of what Hunger Games Catching Fire did over a year ago. And after seeing what Catching Fire did, I was wondering if it would escalate even further in Mockingjay Part 1. And after seeing it with my dad during the opening week, I have to say that I thought the movie was great. The good points. If there's anything about this movie franchise that I like the most, it would probably be Jennifer Lawrence as Katniss Everdeen. And yeah, everyone else in the cast with their part also did a good job in the movie. But I think that Jennifer Lawrence had solidified herself as Katniss Everdeen forever. And I thought that she was on the same level of her acting as Katniss Everdeen as she was in last year's Hunger Games movie. Next, I would have to say that the directing by Francis Lawrence was almost perfect. Like I said in my review for last year's Hunger Games movie, I think that Francis Lawrence was one of the people and one of the elements that elevated the Hunger Games franchise from the first to second movie. He just knew where to have drama, suspense, and a little bit of comedic relief sprinkled throughout the movie. And he also knew what to focus on every single second throughout the movie. Well, actually, I'll take that statement back because there's something that I found bad about his directing, but I'll talk about that later on. Next, I'll have to say that the writing by Danny Strong and Peter Craig was done well. I was a little bit worried about the transition from the writers that we had in Catching Fire to the writers that we have now for Mockingjay Part 1. And I was worried because I think another element that escalated the franchise up from the first to second movie was the pair of writers that we had for Catching Fire. So now that we had a different pair of writers going into Mockingjay Part 1, I was a little bit worried that we would lose that element of writing that was good in Catching Fire. But I found out that the writing by Danny Strong and Peter Craig was actually good. And in my opinion, it was on the same level as the writing done by the pair of writers in Catching Fire. Because Danny Strong and Peter Craig took the story of the Hunger Games universe from the games and transitioned it to this war and propaganda and rebellion side to the story. And I like the themes that they wrote into this movie as well, because the themes of the movie about propaganda and about politics correlate with things that happened in the past and with things that are happening in present day right now. I also thought that they did a good job of writing in the surprise of the movie, which I'll talk about later on in the spoiler section. Other things I thought were done well in the movie were the visual effects, the cinematography, the score of the movie, the makeup, the sound design, the production design, and the production design for District 13 was done really well. And the editing and pacing of the movie was done well too. And that's a complaint that a lot of people had with the movie, was that the pacing was really slow, and I'll talk more about that in the bad points, but for the most part I thought the pacing was done well with the corresponding events that were happening in the movie. Because I was wondering about some of these points where the pacing was slow, and I was wondering what would happen if it was a little bit faster, and then after thinking about it I was like, actually the pacing needed to be slow for those moments so that it wouldn't feel rushed. And the final good point about this movie would have to be the ending, and I'll talk about that later on as well in the spoiler section. The bad points. Okay, so the main thing that I didn't like about the movie was that there wasn't enough time for some of the other main characters or with some of the other supporting characters in the movie. And I think that's because almost throughout the entire movie, Katniss is in almost every scene. There are scenes that are original and that do not have Katniss in them, but really I thought that there wasn't enough time spent for some of these other characters that were either main characters or supporting characters. That should have gotten a little bit more time. Okay, so for the directing, there was this one action scene that I did not like. And the reason I didn't like this action scene was because it was going back to the Gary Ross shaky cam from the first Hunger Games. And when this scene was happening in the movie, I was like, Francis, what are you doing? Don't do the shaky cam from the first movie. Because Francis Lawrence did really good action in Catching Fire, so when there was shaky cam in this action scene, I was like, what's going on here? What are you doing, Francis? Anyways, there's this one section of the movie where it's going back between this one place and this other place. And I'll talk about later on in the spoiler section, but I think Francis did not do a good job with focusing on either this place or the other place. And I think this is a bad point for the writing as well, because I think in this one place, you should have had, like, this character talking, while, like, when you switch back to the other place, I think you should have a voiceover with that character talking over this, like, scene where nothing's going on and just people are getting ready for something. Because then you can focus on what this person is saying at this one place, while in this other place watching these people getting ready for something, while listening to the person from the other place still talking. Because what that person is saying sounds interesting and important. And the last bad point I have to say is that even though I said the pacing was good throughout the movie, there were 2 or 3 slow spots in the movie that could have been sped up a little bit more with the pacing, to make it feel like it wasn't being slowed down. Alright, ratings. So my dad gives this movie a 3.25 out of 4 stars, while I give it a 3.5 out of 4 stars. Like I said, I thought that most of the elements from the second movie transitioned almost well into Mockingjay Part 1, but I think that there were some small problems with the directing, editing, and writing that could have been done a little bit better. So if you've seen Catching Fire and you liked it, then I think you'll like Mockingjay Part 1 as well. And if you're a fan of the book, then you'll definitely like this movie then. Alright, spoilers for The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. If you haven't seen this movie yet, and you still want to see it, then get out of here now, because I'm going to be spoiling mostly the end of this movie. And for those of you that have not seen this movie, then I don't know why you want to hear it, because there's a huge surprise that you have to see for yourself. So please, get out of here now. Alright, so the scene I was talking about, where I was going back and forth from this one place to the other, was when Finnick and the camera crew were on the surface of District 13, and Finnick was talking about the secrets that President Snow had. And at the other place was when the hovercraft was flying towards the capital to rescue PETA with the rescue team on board the hovercraft. And what I meant before was that when Finnick was talking to the camera crew and when the live feed was happening, Finnick was talking about the secrets that Snow had that sounded interesting and important. Now for me, I know these secrets because I've read the book. But for people who haven't read the book, then they might still be wondering what the secrets are, because they kept, like, cutting back to the hovercraft, like, as it was approaching the capital. And like I said, what they should have done is that when they went from one place to the other, like, they had Finnick talking, and when they went to the other place, they could have had a voiceover of Finnick still, like, spilling out the secrets. As for the ending, yeah, so the ending where PETA is brainwashed, yeah. I knew that was coming because I read the book, but the way it was set up in the movie was done very well. Because if I had not read the book, I think I would have been surprised. And then when we saw Boggs hit PETA over the head with a pan, and when it went to black, I thought that was where it was going to end. And a few months prior to this, when I was doing my trailer reaction, I said that I thought that this was where it was going to end. But actually, it doesn't end. It comes back with Katniss in a hospital bed. And the group explains how PETA is under, like, Tracker Jack or Venom. And Coin gives her speech to the people of District 13 in that huge atrium or whatever. And we see Katniss go into this, like, solitary room or something. And through a window, we see her watching PETA, like flailing around in his bed, like trying to get out and screaming his head off. And then that's where it goes to black, and it's like, oh man, yep. So that's my review of The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. Hope you guys liked it, and other than that, guys, that's it.